When you hear of suicide, do you expect it to be someone who looks like us? For a long time, the perception was that suicide was foreign to the Black community, especially young people. But not anymore. In 2019, the Congressional Black Caucus convened a task force to examine the issue and, in December of that year, released a report on the crisis of Black youth suicide in America. Appropriately named Ring the Alarm, the study found that the suicide rate among Black youth has been increasing faster than any other racial or ethnic group. I'm your host, Addison Rose, and today we are talking about suicide prevention in our community on Speak Out DC.
Suicide prevention among Black youth requires culturally sensitive approaches that address their unique stressors and challenges, such as systematic racism, discrimination, and domestic issues. Self-reported suicide attempts rose nearly 80% among Black adolescents from 1991 to 2019. By fostering open dialogue, promoting mental health awareness, and providing accessible resources, we can create a supportive environment that helps Black youth overcome mental health struggles and reduces their risk of suicide.
To begin today's conversation, I've decided to share a bit about my journey with mental health and the ways in which it has affected my life. During the summer following my 7th grade year, I experienced one of the most traumatic moments of my life. This was when my self-respect and dignity were taken from me in less than 10 minutes by a high school student I did not even know. Struggling to cope, grasp, and understand the magnitude of what I had gone through, I went into extreme depression immediately afterwards. I pushed away everyone around me, wanting to be alone so I would not have to face the fact that I was indeed not okay. 2 months later, in October of my 8th grade year, everything bubbled over. I made an attempt to end my life. Thankfully, I was unsuccessful in that attempt. But immediately afterwards, I not only realized the negative impact that I was having on myself, but especially on those around me. Our guests today have their own stories. Joining me is Keith Lawson. Keith's son Kyle attempted suicide not once, but twice. Also joining the conversation is former Philadelphia Eagle linebacker Marcus Smith II, who also thought about taking his own life. He founded the Circle of M Foundation, whose mission is to bring awareness and advocacy of mental health challenges within the sports community. Keith, let's start with you. What was the wake-up call like for you and your wife, Kelly?
Well, you know, it was such a unexpected thing. So we thought we had everything figured out. We were working on the path that we thought was a path for Kyle, you know. Thought we had worked it all out. He was good in school. He was well-liked. He had a good friend group. And then somewhere around freshman year of high school, everything just changed suddenly. And we just started noticing that his behaviors were changing. He started hanging out with different folk. And we found ourselves one night in a hospital after he had attempted to take his life. Mm-hmm. And we were just at a loss because we didn't know how we had gotten there.
Yeah. I think my parents would definitely agree with you. They thought everything was fine, and they did notice me in my room a lot more, sleeping a lot more, very irritable with everyone around me, but they thought it was just going through the motions of being a teenager, and they didn't want to pry too much because I would get very upset with them when they would try. So it was almost like I would not allow them in, and I'm sure that's the same case with your son. As much as you may think that something's going on, we're not going to let you see it, even if there is something going on. What about for you, Marcus? How was your journey like figuring out and acknowledging that there was an issue?
Man, it was tough. It was tough to acknowledge that there was an issue. I've probably had an issue since I was 8 years old. And me being diagnosed with anxiety disorder, right, I had that issue. But, you know, in our communities, the communities that we come from, my father, he didn't know what it looked like. He didn't even know that was something that we could tell the doctor about. So when my first anxiety attack happened, they put a blood pressure reading on me, thinking that it was something that was heightening my blood pressure. But over time, as I started to continue this journey, as I got to high school, college, and then to the pros, for me, you know, I had suicide an attack too, 2 times, right? It was something that happened to me while I was with the Seattle Seahawks. And over that time span of me not addressing my mental health issues and it turning into depression, that's what happened. And I continue to say that just because, you know, I want kids to understand that, you know, they're not alone, and that they, every time that they speak up and speak out, that they're freeing themselves every single time.
So what do you think it was for you that kind of forced you to say something about it, forced you to acknowledge it, and not continue to suppress it?
Man, so over time, as when you're playing sports and you're doing all these things and you're having fun playing sports, there was something that was tugging on me each and every year. And I didn't realize that it was something that I could control and that I could actually address. But what happened was, it was so many sleepless nights that I couldn't sleep. I couldn't be the very best football player that I could be. I couldn't be the best father that I could be, or the best husband that I could be. I knew something was wrong with me, but I didn't know that it was actually that. And so I woke up one morning, I basically had an anxiety attack in my sleep. I would have that frequently. And I just got so tired of being sick and tired. And you just want to end the pain, right? And so when you want to end the pain, you don't think about anything else but doing that. And at that moment, that's what I tried to do. But thankfully, you know, God didn't allow me to do that, because he has me on the stage being able to speak and talk to you guys now. And at that very moment, that was the first time that I said that I needed help. My coach, Coach Pete Carroll, you guys know, Seattle Seahawks, he was very, very good with me as far as, hey, we're gonna get you the help that you solely desire. So that was the first time that I actually was vulnerable enough to say I need help in a time of crisis, when I was at my end.
Addison, if I may, I just want to ask him something. So, because he mentioned something that just very key to, and I don't know if it's how your situation was, but for me, is that, you know, in the black community, we don't really talk about, you know, mental health in the way that we really should, right?
Right.
So a lot of times, instead of actually dealing with things, and especially as black men, you know, you got to be strong, suck it up, you know, put some Robitussin on it, right? Everything's gonna be better, or go pray on it, right? When really, what you need to do is seek some help, talk to somebody. You know, I think everybody can probably attest to this, at least in my experience. They have somebody in their family that has some sort of issue, mental health or otherwise, that they don't even talk about.
Right.
They act like they don't even exist, like they are like a troll living under a bridge or something, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a situation like you seem like you have the life that a lot of people want. You're doing well, everything's working, but you still have to deal with, you know, what's going on inside that people don't really know.
Right.
So you mentioned something that when we were dealing with Kyle, like, we didn't get it. We're like, you know, you got a great life. What do you mean? What's the problem? You got everything you need. You're not struggling.
Right.
You got 2 parents at home. You have everything. Why would you possibly be depressed or whatever? So, and we weren't hearing him.
Right.
And so that ended up going so far down the road that we ended up where we ended up, and there multiple times. So, you know, what would you say was your, I think you sort of touched on it, but what was your thought process of going? Were you thinking at all about the other people in your life?
No, and not at that time. I wasn't thinking about the people around me, because I was so far gone on myself, on what I was trying to end. And you think about, it's so hard for men in general to be vulnerable, right? And I think in those moments, I didn't know how to do that, because I didn't see my father do that. I seen my father, you know, put his suit and tie on. If something was going on at home, he just went about his day like nothing ever happened. And that is transferred to our kids, whether we like it or believe it or not. So that's innately that's what they do, right? Even if you're trying to tell them or you're trying to figure out what's going on with them, inevitably they're not going to necessarily say that because they don't want to let you down, or they don't want to make you feel like something is actually like really wrong with them, or you panic or anything like that. So the reason that I would never or wouldn't say anything was because I know my father, he helped me get to that point. He was like the backbone of where I was and how I did things. So the vulnerability piece is the most important piece, and you have to build trust with them so they would be able to express how they're feeling, and you have to do it with no judgment. So yeah.
Well, we're going to continue the conversation soon when Speak Out DC returns. We're going to look at what could be causing this uptick in suicide among Black youth, but we will be right back. Welcome back to Speak Out DC. So Keith, after you all acknowledged that there was an issue with your son regarding his mental health, how did things kind of change in your household with the family kind of dynamic?
You know, it's been I gotta say, day to day, just moment by moment, because we were as much learning about how to sort of exist in this new reality, because we thought we knew what was ahead. And there's no playbook to this, right? So we didn't know what we were doing. And it's part of the reason that we started the Sunrise Project, because we started to reach out and we started to share our story with other people. And every time we did, we found someone who said, oh my God, I thought I was the only person going through that. And it was so amazing and surprising to hear the amount of people who are dealing with circumstances similar or otherwise that could benefit from just being able to speak out. So that's why we really started, having these conversations, which has turned into a bigger platform. But the point was, we started opening up and looking to the community and looking around for support. Because at the end of the day, like, nobody can support you if they don't know what you're going through. So as opposed to us suffering through this and being ashamed, I feel like if you had a cold, you get some cold medicine. In this instance, it's a mental health thing, and we started trying different ways to get support for Kyle.
And with you, Marcus, how do you think you started to acknowledge it following you actually acknowledging it? How did your kind of maybe day-to-day life change? How did your interactions with others, especially your family, change and differ?
It was tough. That process was tough too, because that's something that my family had never seen before. And like you said, nobody had ever talked about that. And I know with what happened to me, it kind of starts when you're young. So when I started to do therapy, I went all the way back to when I was 8. So I was like, man, if I can imagine kids that age, or how many kids that was dealing with that. And that was part of the reason why I also started the Circle of M Foundation, where we unmask the feelings that cause anxiety, depression. It's like, no, I'm not a therapist, but I'm a life coach, and I can help guide you to get the very best healing that you so desire. And then initially that will help the parents, right? Because if we can get to the kids first, if we can say, hey, it's okay to be vulnerable, and you can speak up, and you feel so much of a weight that's being lifted off of you, right? I think it'll help the parents out even that much more, because they'll even know or can feel what their kids may be feeling at that time, or they can empathize with them, even though if they don't understand it at the time, right? So it's important to be able to speak up like that. And that was kind of my day-to-day after that, because once I got my healing and obviously we're still healing. It's still a process. It's a journey. But once I was able to get that, I wanted other people to have that same feeling. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think for me, so actually, how long would you say that healing process kind of took? And I know it's a everyday kind of thing, and especially for me, like the journey continues. But for me, I would say it was after my suicide attempt, it was about a year, maybe a little more than that, till I kind of really felt a difference and things were able to change for me.
So let me ask you, do you have siblings?
I do have siblings.
How do you feel like your journey affected them? Because what I was going to say is, for me, is it's been a process. It's day to day. But Kyle has a younger brother as well. So his younger brother's looking up to him, and that's his dude. They're, sort of his mini idol. And to see him struggling, affects not only Kyle, but also affects the parents. And then how we deal with it affected our younger child. So we've been trying to figure out how to deal with, his treatment and his healing, as well as our own healing as a family, and also not negatively impact, the experience his brother is going through. So, we even had issues with him just sort of turning inward and sort of shutting everybody out and going into his own little world that we were extremely concerned about.
Yeah.
That, again, that's all still ongoing therapy, ongoing conversations, and just trying to be as open and as honest as we can be about what we're going through, and trying to, get them to do the same. Like, if you're going through something, speak to us. We don't know what you're going through if you can't tell us. So it's been a lesson in communication, really.
Yeah, it definitely affected my siblings. I mean, my older sister doesn't live with us. She's, a lot older, so she's on her own accord. But I think it definitely did something to her. She did not, see it coming with me, of course, as nobody did. But, that sibling kind of bond kind of forces you to feel some type of way when you feel like you really missed something. And so I think that affected her in that sense. But my little sister, who, I would say does look up to me as well, I heard she was crying, and like when she heard I was in the hospital and she couldn't come visit me and I was there for a while, that really upset her. And when I was in that stage of very angry at life and the world, and especially myself, I would say probably the most irritable towards her. I would take that out on her. Why are you bothering me? Like, it just was going in on her. So I definitely think it affected those around me. And then my parents, of course, they felt like they missed the mark. They were like, what did we do wrong? What were we not open enough? Were we not making our children feel like they could talk to us enough? And I honestly, like I said earlier, there was nothing they could have done. Really, it was nothing that I told my friends, to be honest.
Man, yeah, it's almost like what you said earlier, Keith. It's like this sense of like you failed, right? And you take on that burden and that responsibility. And even with my family, we have come so accustomed to not dealing with stuff. It's almost like you couldn't even feel it. Like sometimes I felt like my parents didn't know how to feel in those moments, or didn't know what to say, because they have just come so accustomed to not feeling anything, just continue to go throughout your day. Because you have to think, in their day and age, if you talk about 60s, 70s, 80s,
they do not talk about anything.
Right, they don't have time, they didn't have time to even discuss those things, because they were so focused on getting ahead. They had to do everything twice as much to get ahead. So that's the mindset, right? So you take that mindset, now you have a child, right? And you're trying to train your child up in the way that they should go, right? But it's a different era. So we just have to relearn and reteach how we do things.
Yeah. We'll get into the lack of resources for Black youth and what we all can do to be aware of and help the most vulnerable when Speak Out DC returns. Welcome back. Keith, tell me more about the Sunrise Project that you mentioned that you and your wife had started.
So when we realized that our community and our resources were really being helpful to other people, Kelly, my wife Kelly, and Kyle had a conversation, and he said he would be willing to tell his story, which was really the start of it. So the two of them started talking, and we realized that him speaking out might have a bigger impact than just us talking about it in a sort of parental way. But hearing somebody who's in that struggle, youth, being willing to talk about their story and how they got there might be of some use to other people. So we started doing our Sunday call, the Sunrise Project, which started out as just a safe space for families to talk about issues like depression, suicide, anxiety, dealing with mostly black men, young men, and then it started being a little bit more broad, so it's men and women. And we started that doing on Sunday calls, which then morphed into a bigger thing, and we were on the Oprah's podcast, et cetera, but it's just been growing ever since. So every time we have a conversation we hear feedback from people about how much it has either helped them or given them something to think about or maybe giving them some warning signs that could help them, we realize that this is something that we have to do. So we've been doing it ever since.
Yeah.
Every Sunday.
That's great. I actually had the opportunity of being on you all's podcast as well. So that was great. And as we continue to talk about resources, tell me more about the Circle of M, Marcus.
Yeah, so the Circle of M initially started, after my two-time attempt. I actually got to go to therapy. But then after I started doing this healing process, I had to go back into the facility, had to go get my stuff. And you would be so surprised like how many guys came up to me in the locker room, some of my teammates, and how they commended me of being so vulnerable, to take time away to actually do what I need to do for my mental health, right? So when I seen that and they started to express to me, man, I was just going through that, right? But they just pushing through. I just had that time. I just had the guts to just say I need help, right? And so that's where the Circle of M came from. It's my circle. It's the people that look like me who are dealing with the same thing, whether they're the general population or whether it's with sports. And I started the podcast first to start the awareness process, to talk about the athletes and what we deal with. And now we're starting to direct ourselves to more solution-based, right, where I developed a program for youth and athletes for us to have a healing circle, for us to do some training that could actually help them not only on the field, but we want to talk about their mental. I want to see where you're going in life in general. What do you have afterwards, right? Because we know that football, well, NFL stands for not for long, right? And we go through this identity crisis, right? So how do we as athletes be able to get through that part without having to deal with those emotions of being out of their sport? So that's where it all started, and that's what we're doing right now, just to be able to combat those mental health issues that we see on the daily and get ahead of them so we can help the people in need.
To the young people and athletes that you have been able to talk to and help, what do you think has been the biggest struggle for them as they've been fighting their own demons? Do you think it's literally just taking the initiative of getting help? Do you think it's that you kind of just landed in their lap in the sense that you're speaking to them? They didn't ask for it, but you're there, and now they're appreciating it. I mean, what have you seen to be the biggest thing?
I think that in the era of social media, I think that's a big component with the kids that I talk to, because they think they're supposed to be what they see on social media.
Which is unrealistic.
It's very unrealistic. So you have to kind of like peel back the layers and meet them right where they are, right? Develop the trust with them, the trust factor. That way they can open up to you. And I think that has been one of the hardest things to combat, because let's say if you have an athlete and he may have a lot of followers on Instagram, right? And he wants to be in a Division I athlete, let's say in the back end he's not getting the offers that he solely desires, right? That can really play on his emotions because he's like, oh, on social media, I'm this. But in the real world, this is not happening for me. And so they can go down a whole rabbit hole that is hard to come out of. So that's one thing that is really tough, especially on just the general population and the athletes too.
So what is a piece of advice that you both would give to anyone, any specific group? It could be teens, it could be families, it could be parents, that you kind of wish you had heard when you were going through it?
Well, first of all, I think we got to give ourselves some grace, right? You know, one of the things you mentioned, and we sort of talked about off camera, is that, especially for the parents, like the immediate thing that we felt was like failure, just like, what did I do wrong? As opposed to
blame yourself.
Exactly, blaming. But, you know, get the resources, get somebody that, you know, you can talk to, use that, whatever that is, if it's a counselor, if it's a therapist, or whatever. Don't be afraid, don't be embarrassed to reach out and get the help that you need. And then sharing actually is cathartic. You know, so the more we shared, the more it relieved us of some of the stress we were going through. And then also, the more we became a blessing to some other people who were looking for someone to hear and understand what they're going through. And so that you get past that feeling of, I'm out here by myself. So I think those things, like, give yourself some grace, understand that some things are not within your control, but you can get a way to deal with them by talking to professionals and therapists and sharing your story.
For me, it's like your vulnerability, it's your strength. It's not your weakness. In this day and age, it's important to be vulnerable, but then also, I've said this before, success is not a destination, it's a mindset. And so, you know, what we have to teach our youth and our kids is, like, you're successful where you are right now. Right? You have to believe that wholeheartedly. You're not successful off of what you see or what you think success is, right? Because evidently it's not real, right? And so we have to really peel back that and really build their confidence to know that, look, you are successful. You being in high school, you being here right now is a success story, and you have to believe that. And when you get to where you're going, right? It's not the destination, but you are already successful, so you already have that embedded in you, so you can continue to move forward throughout life.
In my journey. Well, I'd like to thank my guests, Keith Lawson and Marcus Smith II, for joining me today for this important conversation. And thank you, of course, for tuning in. I'm DC Youth Mayor Addison Rose, and remember, let your voice be heard. Speak out, DC.